Welcome to the Growth Plus Exit podcast, where owners of privately held middle market companies talk about founding, scaling, and exiting their businesses successfully. Learn how to maximize and monetize your business on your own terms. Let's get started.
Hi, I'm Susan Carney, your host for the Growth Plus Exit podcast, where middle market business owners and CEOs talk to us about founding, scaling, and often exiting their companies. This episode is brought to you by Newport, a cadre of founders, business owners, and seasoned C-suite executives, quite easy for me to say, who help CEOs of privately held companies build more valuable businesses and exit them on their own terms. You can learn about us at newportllc.com. Today, I'm thrilled to be talking with Anand Basu. Anand is a friend and a former client of mine. He's an entrepreneur and a technologist. Anand was the owner and president at ESAC, which stands for Enterprise Science and Computing, for 7 years before selling the company to ICF several years ago. Welcome, Anand. We're pleased to have you with us today.
Thank you, Susan. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, and I'm looking forward to answering your questions. I've never done a podcast in my life, so I'm a little nervous as well, as you can tell. But I'm really excited to talk to you.
Yeah, I think this will be fun. It'll be great. And so let's start off with some things about you professionally, Anand. First, tell us a little bit about your background, about your career, and what are the common threads that run through your professional career?
So I'm an electrical engineer by training, and I did my I came to the U.S. in the early 90s, late 80s, 89 to be exact, and enrolled in a computer engineering master's program at Wright State University. From there, my career kind of took off in the direction of a consulting career, sort of working for a company called Capgemini, and they hired me out of college, and they moved me around all over the country, and I got to see all parts of America, and that was a wonderful, wonderful experience for me, especially for somebody who's just out of college and starts experiencing these different companies, different cultures, different opportunities, technologies. And this was in the early 90s, and consulting was a big industry at that time. So I really enjoyed myself. So and all these engagements, my role was mostly in technology development, software development. So I was a developer. I used to write software code and developed a deep appreciation for technology and what it can do for you, and things that were not really clear to you in an academic setting that you don't really get in college. So from there, I moved to Bell Labs in AT&T, where I sort of focused on telecom, software development in telecom switches and call centers and all that exciting stuff during the 90s. After the telecom boom was over, I moved to a company called Celera Genomics. And that's where my journey in sort of life sciences, bioinformatics started. And it was also my first sort of startup that I joined. And it was a really exciting place. We were mapping the human genome, for those who were familiar with that effort. It was the private arm of that effort. And eventually that company wound down right after the dot-com boom and the bust followed. And a few of us from that company went off in different directions, but one of us started consulting on an individual basis, started working as a 1099 as a consultant for different local companies here in the DC area, like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And so that person and I, we got together one day and then we decided, we know a lot of these folks from Celera who have gone into different directions, who bring this wonderful skill of life sciences and technology, the intersection of life sciences and technology, which was kind of unique at that time. And we thought, why don't we take a crack at starting a real sort of company and getting into some serious life sciences business, and so that's where ESAC sort of got started. And I think our first business, our first project was with Georgetown University here in the DC area. And that's where we got started. And from there, we got into government consulting, government contracting, and the rest, as they say, is history. So here I am.
Yeah. How did you end up getting into government contracting? Because you did so much work in that area.
Yeah, that had been our primary focus, was in government contracting. It was really accidental, I would say. We got approached by somebody. We were not very familiar with government contracting. We got approached by another small company that wanted to do something at NIH, at NCI. They had a specific project for which they needed a specific skill set. They needed assembly informatics person, so genome assembly informatics person. That one person on our team had that experience. And so he got hired as a subcontract, as an individual single person. And that's where we sort of learned about this whole business of government contracting. Even though we had lived in the DC metro area, we weren't that familiar with the whole ecosystem around the Beltway. So that was sort of our introduction.
Yeah, I think unlike common perception, a lot of people live for many years in the DC area without being engaged either as an employee of the federal government or in government contracting, even though it's such a vibrant community.
Yeah.
For that. And so tell me a little bit about the development of ESAC. So the two of you put it together and started focusing on life sciences and technology, that intersection. How did you end up as the president? How did the company grow and develop over the next few years?
So I joined. So Shine was the owner and the principal of the company at that time, and I joined as a senior vice president. At some point, Shine wanted to exit. Well, before that, we were a fairly small company, and our big break came with a contract at CMS when I started, like right after, maybe 9 or 10 months after I took over. We got a big contract at CMS, which kind of propelled us in that right direction, and that's where we started seriously building the company out. And so right after that contract, the previous owner wanted to exit, and he wanted to get out. So we made sure that he exited, and I took over as president from him, and continued building the company. So we got a lot of different. So we expanded our footprint at the VA as well as at NIH, and so that helped us grow a lot.
Yeah. What about some of the challenges you faced as the company scaled from, small to medium, from private to government contract? What? Tell me about some of those.
I think the rules and regulations that we were not familiar with, that kind of was a big challenge for us. All the accounting stuff that we had to take care of, all the different sort of FAR provisions that we had to, the federal acquisition rules that we had to familiarize ourselves with. Because earlier we were just subcontractors and it didn't affect us that much. Once we became a prime contractor, we were introduced to a whole slew of reporting requirements and, the usual billing and reporting requirements that come with government contracting, the accounting standards that we had to upgrade our accounting systems. We had to get the proper accreditations like CMMI or all the other accreditations that are helpful in getting newer contracts. So that was one aspect of it. But I think that those are all sort of mechanical sort of aspects of the business.
Mhm.
But more importantly, I think there was the people aspect was a little bit more challenging than just, because these the other challenges are morely formulaic. People have done it before, and you know how you can get it done. But getting into large scale HR management systems and employee management, performance evaluations, and all that thing, hiring an HR person. We never had an HR person when we were a small company. So hiring our first HR person was a lot of fun. And we found a lot of interesting candidates who brought their own ways of thinking about employee management. What we thought of would be something that would be cool would be shot down very quickly by the HR person. And yeah, no, that doesn't make sense. That's not quite kosher. So those were some of the challenges, but I would say none of them, they were all good challenges.
Mhm.
They were all exciting things. We learned a lot of things, and it's always fun to learn new things like human capital management. That I as an engineer wasn't that familiar with or wasn't that excited about, but then you are actually forced to do, not forced, but you have to do those things, and then you learn this whole new world of new regulations and new how to manage people,
Mhm.
how to manage people without being their supervisor. How to manage a large company, which has many projects, many different ways of running a project. How do you bring them all together in one unified way of doing business across the company? Those are those are some of the challenges that we had, but like I said, none of them were very difficult or off-putting. They were all very, to me at least, they were very interesting and exciting.
Yeah. How did being an engineer and then being in that position to be a leader and to deal with human capital issues, how would you say your leadership style might have changed as that company grew, as you got more expert in business building along with your technology expertise?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Before I so in your usual career progression, you start off as an engineer, you start coding, then you become like maybe a project manager, then you become a people manager, and then you have larger responsibilities. Maybe you have a portfolio of projects. So I think I skipped one of the generations in that, one of the steps in that, and I jumped from being a sort of technical manager directly to a sort of a larger scale management at a larger scale. So a couple of things. In between, while I was at Celera, I actually got myself an MBA,
Hmm.
and I went to the Smith School of Business here at the University of Maryland and did a part-time MBA there. And while I was doing it, I may not have been that engaged in the program itself, which I hate to admit. But then once I got in the middle of these things, I tried looking back and I realized, there's a lot of useful stuff that you can learn from these programs. And so that was a big realization, sort of a big help for me when I started sort of leveraging some of those things that I had learned. And then at some point, you have to change sort of your management style.
Mhm.
That that kind of happened almost by accident or almost I don't know how to put it, but suddenly I realized the value of leading from behind. While you're an engineer and you're doing things, you want to be in the forefront. You want to be doing the things you want to take credit for. Oh, look at this great piece of software that I wrote. You have to sort of change your mindset from that individual contributor sort of thinking to not this middle management thinking, but to a higher level thinking where you're constantly thinking, how do I make other people successful? Because that's how these companies are successful. You can't do it yourself. So getting into that sort of mindset, um, how do I lead from behind? How do I make sure that
Mhm.
people get the right credit? How do they how do I put them in front so that there is ownership in the business, there's ownership in the company, and people feel part of a family that we wanted to bring together
Mhm.
with ESAC. So that was a long-winded answer to it.
But it was a good one. It was a good one. I appreciate it because I think sometimes I've worked in technology a lot, and sometimes those engineers that lead businesses have a hard time figuring out how to adjust the way they work with people. And you seem to have figured it out in a very a positive and kind of graceful way.
Yeah, no, I was very lucky in that I have always had good mentors. I had a great boss when I was at AT&T at Bell Labs. I still remember her. Her name was Donna, and she would give me these nuggets of advice once in a while that at that time I was like, what is she talking about? But then when I look back on it, I was like, that was really helpful. If I remember those things, I wouldn't have made so many mistakes.
Yeah, that's great. And so 3 years ago, you sold ESAC to ICF, where you're presently a senior vice president. Um, what looking back on that with the benefit of some time, how would you describe that process and why do you think it was successful? What could other business owners learn from your experience as they think about maybe selling their businesses so that they can be more successful?
I would say, I had a great team. I had you guys supporting me, obviously. So that was a great help. And I had a good attorney. I had a good legal help, and the whole sales team was excellent. They all came together. But more importantly, I think I I made a decision very early on to be very transparent and open about the process with the employees
Mhm.
and to get them involved in the sales process right from the beginning. So that A, it's not a surprise for them, and B, they learn from the experience and they understand why we're doing something. Why are we selling? That's a very important thing to sort of communicate to employees at the time. And I think that transparency helped a lot because they help actually, I'd like to give them equal credit for being able to position ourselves for a successful sale is their ability to present, their ability to come and talk to the prospective buyers and put their best foot forward. And so the only advice I would have for folks who are thinking about this is to be open and transparent with your employees. If your company is structured like that, where your biggest asset is your employees, if it's a service, which is a services company, is that. And so you have to treat those assets in the right way. And the right way to do that is to be open and transparent. And I've seen that behind every successful sale. The few that I have seen is the employees themselves are engaged and they see the value of being part of a larger company, being part of given more opportunities. Because once we became part of ICF, there's a whole world of, I mean, it's a publicly traded huge company. It was like 100 times bigger than us, at least, maybe more. And so they saw the value, they saw the benefit of such an acquisition, such a merger, and so they were equally engaged in the process. And yeah, I think that would be my one advice that if anybody wanted an advice.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that because that's always a big conversation with an owner when they're making that decision. Because on the one hand, they want to respect their team and they want to be transparent. On the other hand, they're concerned if they're transparent, people are going to freak out or leave or
Yeah.
get distracted or kind of all those other things. And so I really appreciate your experience, which was open transparency, because I know on the day that you closed your deal, all of your employees already had offer letters to join the new company. And in conversation with you, I learned that 3 years later, most of them are still there and thriving. And that's really the sign of a great success
Hmm.
when a business sells.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. I love that. I love that. And so, What were some of your proudest moments at ESAC as you were building a business? We talked about challenges, but what about the great stuff? What are some things that you were really proud of?
I think whenever an employee said something good about the company, how they loved working here, working at ESAC, how they actually agreed with our philosophy. We always wanted ESAC to be a sort of a family, a very family friendly company where there would be as much work life balance as possible as we can afford in a consulting sort of environment. And so whenever I heard that, got that feedback, that made me really proud, thinking that, yeah, at least we were successful in having happy, satisfied employees. Um, and then there's the usual, you win some big contracts, you're very happy. Those are, you know, temporary happiness, things that come and go. But these kinds of moments where people tell you that, I really love working here. I really enjoy working here. Those are some of the things that will stay with me forever.
Yeah, that's great. Can we talk a little bit about you personally now for just a while?
Yeah.
First, tell me, where were you raised? What was it like there? What lessons did you learn as a child or a young adult that you bring with you to the office?
So I was born in New Delhi, India. My parents were both academics. They were the farthest you could get from entrepreneurship or running a business. You could imagine they were professors and researchers. I'm the youngest of three. And so by the time I was, in India, it's a very different culture in the sense academics is very important. And your parents spend a lot of time and effort making sure that you're properly educated and trained and headed in the right direction. You don't kind of go off and do something that in those days wasn't that cool. So I was the third of three children. I was the youngest of three, and by the time I was of that age when my parents had to worry about me, they had lost interest. I think in what is he doing? We don't know what he's doing. So I ended up doing. I ended up leaving home early on and went off to a school far away from home. And when I graduated, I came to the U.S. So one of the things that my parents kind of taught me was to be nice to people all the time. That has stayed with me. They were very nice people. They were very open and honest with people, and that's what I learned from them. That's the one thing that, and the value of academics and the value of having a good education was always there. But underlying all that was this theme of be nice and open to people, and that's what I've tried to tell that to my children all the time too. Is the most redeeming, important quality I want to see in you guys. Be nice to people.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I'd love to meet your parents. They sound like terrific people. And so, where did you get the entrepreneurial thing from then? If your parents didn't have it,
It was, and like I said earlier, it was almost accidental, I think. Just being there at the right place at the right time. I don't think there's any other entrepreneur in our whole family, in our whole, both sides of the family, my mom, maybe on my mother's side. But now I have a cousin who's my mother's brother's son, who's also an entrepreneur, who's a much bigger entrepreneur than I am. He runs his own bank essentially.
Wow.
So I think this generation kind of changed. I think it changed in this generation. But then again, both my kids are headed in the other direction. They're not going to be entrepreneurs. They made it amply clear.
Yeah.
That was one of the reasons I sold the company, was there was no interest in continuing it as a family business.
Yeah. So I guess maybe so you're the oddball, and your parents and your kids are more the same. Yeah.
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 And,
That's great.
I mean,
What was your first job?
Oh, my first job was, I think, repairing computers. I used to take out boards from those old. You remember those PCs that were as big as your desk? That had these huge, thick, fat PCs and a huge monitor sitting on top with floppy disks and like that. So I would go travel to different parts repairing those PCs, change the motherboard, change the graphics card, or change the floppy drive, take that out, swap it with a new one, and try to debug things. Why isn't it working? So that was an interesting job. Got to meet a lot of interesting people
Yeah.
who would complain about their computers all the time. And back in the 80s, those MS-DOS based computers weren't very reliable, anyways.
That's right. That's right. I remember those days. You get your screwdriver out and unscrew about 8 screws and take that metal top off, and it would just
Uh-huh.
be wide open in there, right? All
Yeah.
the things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, can you tell me? I know people who run companies are pretty busy. They've got a lot to do. And I'm wondering if there are any kind of daily rituals or life hacks that you developed to support your success professionally.
One thing I've always done and I keep doing is I block like my mornings every like 3 days a week. My calendar is always blocked from morning till about 10 o'clock. So I don't take any meetings or any calls during that time, 3 days a week. And I've done that for a very, very long time, just to give myself some time to think, stop and think, read. And some people do emails and catch up with all that stuff. I don't do that
Mhm.
either during that time. That's sort of my time. So I try to preserve some me time um, every day, every other day. So 3 days a week, and that has helped me a lot. Keeps you grounded, keeps you balanced, and then you catch up on all kinds of interesting things that are happening in the world of technology during those times. That was my sort of I look forward to those times when I would read up what's happening in Wired magazine or something like that, and keep up to date with the technologies. And so that stayed with me even during when I transitioned to management, and not give up that time. Um, yeah, and on a personal basis, I would take 2 vacations a year every year for sure with my kids. So that
Mhm.
was another thing that I always wanted to do, was to go. I have this travel bug, so I'm traveling. I love to travel, um, and so I would take those vacations too.
Mhm. So you found a way to kind of like a double whammy to have balance in your life and time for yourself while staying relevant in your field by
Yeah,
spending some of that enjoyably reading and researching and so on.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's terrific. So I understand that you're retiring from ICF soon. And my question is, what's next for you?
Um,
Do you know?
I don't. I recently learned of a new term. Um, um, Applied to this scenario. I think not a new term, but a new application of this term called, in computers, you go into a maintenance mode for some time. It's
Yeah.
not a reboot, it's a maintenance mode. So I'm going to go into maintenance mode for a couple of months, I think, and take it easy, slow down, and then slowly wake up and then turn the maintenance mode off. And maybe by December, January, I'll have something. I don't know what.
Yeah. I hope you'll get to travel during that time too.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too.
That's great. So this is my last question. What advice would you give to your peers, owners, leaders of other middle market companies? The things that you've learned that you'd like to keep them from having to learn the hard way?
It's a difficult, it's an interesting question. What advice would I have? I'm not good at giving advice to people, that it's just not me, but give it a shot. I think having a sort of maybe a decision framework with what do you want to achieve the end, so that you can sort of, if you're faced with a question, you can use a frame, having a personal framework to run your life, sort of Where do you want to be from 5 years from today or 10 years from today? And having that end goal is, I think, it's a very powerful way of running your business or running your life or running everything. So you always have this sort of, it's not as mathematical as I'm making it sound like, okay,
Mhm.
this X and Y together and the answer comes out in the end. Not like that, but maybe having a goal to say that, okay, I need to exit in 5 years. What can I do now? How does that, what is this specific question that I'm working on, this specific issue that I have? What's the impact of that on the exit that I want to have in 5 years? So something like that,
Mhm.
even unconsciously, if you keep that in the back of your mind. And if you're running a consulting company, if you're running a people business, and always remember they are the most important asset that you ever have, and keeping them happy and open and transparent. Be as open as you can with them, um, and it will go a long way. Trust me on that. That is one thing I can definitely give advice on is be open, transparent, and honest with your employees, um, especially if you're running a consulting company.
Yeah. I think that's a wonderful note to close on, Anand. I love that.
Right?
That's been an experience of you, so I know you say that from the heart. And so, thank you so much. It's really great connecting with you today and getting a chance to have you share some things about your life and your work. I'm sure your colleagues who have a chance to listen to or review the podcast will find it inspiring and also insightful. So I really appreciate it, and I will look forward to seeing what you do next.
Thank you, Susan. It's been my pleasure too, talking to you. It was great fun.
Is,
Just talking about things that you don't think about most of the time, is always interesting.
yeah, I always learn something for sure. So we're going to close out. This is the Growth and Exit podcast, and I've been talking with Anand Basu, the entrepreneur, successful business owner, and soon to be on maintenance mode for a few months. Thanks, Anand.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you for listening to the Growth Plus Exit podcast, sponsored by Newport, a unique national business advisory firm. If you enjoyed this show, be sure to share, like, and subscribe for future episodes.